Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know that you can hear me okay. Happy New Year to you. I wanted to give you just one final live stream to wrap up a turbulent year. Hopefully the quality is going to be okay. I'm using the StreamYard software and it's not that great, but anyway, it should do for this. So I want to thank you so much for joining again. I want to thank you for all your support in 2023, and let's get on with this. Let's see what you want to discuss, what you want to hear about. Again, I'm no expert, but I'm certainly, as you guys know, not afraid to share my views on different things. Whatever you want to talk about, discuss, just get in the chat. Let me know. It's going to be an interactive thing. Okay, so we've already got Jimmy Hat. Welcome to you. What is your interest rate prediction for 2024? It's a good question. I think it's very difficult to predict this year. Well, this coming year in 2024. I do believe that rates are going to come down. I don't think that rates are going to come down unless something bad is happening. So that could be unemployment is shooting up. Economic crisis, one of those conditions are met. And the reason is because everybody's having this party right now that interest rates are coming down and everything's going to be fine next year. Interest rates are coming down. But what I want to tell people is you've already seen, because of that, conditions have eased in the bond market. So as a response of traders saying, okay, we're going to have rate cuts in 2024, you've got bond market conditions that have eased. So for the Bank of Canada and for the Federal Reserve, this makes it easier for them to keep rates high. So it's kind of funny, the cycle that we go on, because it's like self-reinforcing. You know, everybody thinks rates are going to come down. So that actually means that rates don't come down, because everybody thinking rates are coming down influences these markets, which then actually eases conditions anyway. So the Bank of Canada doesn't control all the interest rates, obviously, and we are seeing rates come down. Mortgage rates have dropped substantially. People aren't asking a question of why that's happening, though. That's happening because it's not predicting good things in the future. I mean, it's took the Bank of Canada taking rates up to 5%. It's took the Fed getting rates over 5% to get inflation down. And what that has done to the economy is yet to be realized by the masses. You guys know, though, on this channel that things are bad. And I see it in the comments all the time. And I would say in 2023, it was around June when I started getting emails come in of people losing their jobs and all these stories of people, business owners who are having a hard time. I met with substantial business owners. Those of you that have met me throughout 2023 will know that I'm an approachable person. If anybody wants to meet me, I'm more than happy to meet up with different people. And I've seen like everything from your average person to your business owner this year, and everybody said the same thing, you know, just struggling throughout this year, and their job has slowed down, you know, work has slowed down for different things. So I think 2024 is just going to be this realized in terms of unemployment. The masses are finally going to realize at some point. And when that happens, you'll have views that line up, which is, you know, most of the time you don't have views that line up. We're always on one side of the boat. It's like I said in that video that I put out the other day, when you usually want to be on the opposite side of the boat to everybody else, but at certain times you have those both views that actually line up together. And I think we'll see that in 2024, and it will be like the economy is collapsing and it's obvious to everybody and they can't hide it anymore. So it's kind of crazy. So let's see. Thank you all for joining. Already got 121 people in here. Thank you all for your support. Again, I'll keep saying that. I'm just so grateful to have you here as viewers. So grateful for this platform to be able to do this. And yeah, we will continue on here. So let's see what would love to have your opinion of smaller communities like Nanaimo, Penticton, etc. in BC will correct or crash in the next 2-3 years. Interesting. With what they did with short-term rentals, that's definitely going to have an effect on the housing market, because I was just curiously looking at short-term rentals in BC for the summer next year, and they've all, like, so many. I just cannot tell you guys how many have disappeared, because these are places I've been before, so I know how many short-term rentals are usually available there. And you've gone from hundreds to like 10 or something like that. So that's going to have a big impact on those housing markets. Those housing markets have been pushed and pushed and pushed by people retiring, by people who were working remotely throughout the pandemic. As the economy as the economy gets worse, essentially, if you're working a remote job, you're more at risk of being fired than anybody else, especially if other people go back to the office and you continue to be fully remote. I would say your job is more at risk than anybody else. So it's going to be difficult. And obviously the problem is people are going to find out who were in these high paying jobs. Let's say they moved from Vancouver and went to Nanaimo. They bought a house there. They're still getting their Vancouver salary. Well, let's say that they get laid off. What happens to them? Obviously, they've got the obligation of their mortgage, which was probably they paid over what the house was worth. They'd be unable to get what they paid for it in 2021 today. So I think you're going to have different dynamics like that are going to put extreme pressure on these smaller housing markets. Some of them have corrected. Vancouver Island hasn't really done a lot. I do look at BC a lot. The interior areas, some areas have really come down in price, like areas around Kelowna and stuff like that. I've seen drops, substantial drops, because, and you have to think of it like this. With what they did with short-term rentals, because they're not allowing you to do as many different things with your property, that does actually bring the value down. So even if the value hasn't gone down, the fundamental value has dropped, definitely. So does it make it as much of an attractive investment if you're investing, or if you're just buying a home to live in it? That's a different scenario. So it's interesting. Anyway, I don't predict good things. By the way, we need to get a backdrop. I don't know what backdrop to use for videos, but I'm going to be experimenting with new ones in the new year. If you have any suggestions, I'm open to suggestions. So everyone liked the storm backdrop, but I thought that there was just too much flashing going on with that, so people would be too distracted by it. But anyway, people seem to love that. So, hey, from Winnipeg, nice to see you, Derek. Thanks, Aloha, Jay. Oh, Cochrane, not too far from here. Hey, Jordan, nice to see you. Philip, Happy New Year to you. Hello from Paraguay. Nice. Let us know how it's going down there. Paraguay has been a place, Paraguay has been a place that I've been looking at, because very cheap to get residency there. It's a country with territorial taxes, so it's an attractive country for those two reasons, but it's very hard. I've been discussing with another subscriber we speak on a frequent basis, who's also looking to get him and his business outside of Canada. And we've been discussing all these things back and forth for a long while here, but Paraguay keeps coming up. I'm still probably going to go to Panama, just because Panama is more accessible. All my family's in Europe, so it kind of makes sense for us to go to Panama. I don't think we'll be in Panama more than a couple of years, and then we'll probably go to Mexico, Malaysia. But really, we're just going to be in Panama for the residency. And the tax residency specifically, it's a good investment. Paraguay is even cheaper. For most people in North America, Paraguay is going to be the best place to go if you can get there cheaply. Flights from Calgary to Paraguay are insane prices. Anyways, getting well off on a tangent. People probably don't want to hear about that. Hi, Luca. People still flooding into Calgary, or does it seem like it's cooling off? I've heard it's pretty full due to the massive immigration inflow. I would say, because I've been selling a lot of our stuff because anticipating the move in 2024. I've since the summer I've been selling a lot of our stuff, anything we don't need, just getting rid of it. And obviously the people who are buying it, they're the people who are moving here and stuff like that. But that just dropped off a cliff after August. I don't know what happened. I was selling stuff really quickly. There was loads of people interested throughout the summer, and then September. I mean, the weather didn't really go bad or anything like that. So I don't know what happened, but it is seasonal, so less people move in the winter. So who knows whether it's tapering off? It's tapering off right now because the seasons that we're in, it's just seasonal. But who knows what's going to happen next year? I mean, people moving into Calgary is just ridiculous, in my opinion, because the cost of living is absolutely, it's going up out of control in Calgary right now. So not a great place to move. If you're a homeowner, you're getting screwed. I mean, they just implemented like a 7 or 8% tax hike for property taxes. It's just going to keep going up. You know, condo fees. Do you really want to buy a condo here? Renting is expensive, still way cheaper than buying though, but renting is really expensive. And now you're getting to the point actually where a lot of places in BC are the same price or they're more affordable. If it was me and I was actually considering a move right now, I would probably move to BC. And that's not because I like the politics there or anything like that. It's because, number one, it's a contrarian move, which I like. And number two, I know the work opportunities, they are dying out for people like in my girlfriend's field, for instance. So they really need people in healthcare there. So they're desperate. Whereas in Calgary, healthcare, it isn't that great. And it used to be. It used to actually pay more than the other provinces. But now you can get more in BC. So wages have kind of just stagnated in Calgary whilst everywhere else has gone up, specifically BC. I mean, Ontario, with the insane amount of immigration that they have, wages stagnate there as well. But that hasn't happened in BC. So you can find these kind of pocket economies where immigrants aren't necessarily going, which are a better place to be. If you're going to anywhere, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, Vancouver, you know, you're going to be fighting the cost of living and just wage compression from all the immigration. And it's sad to see this happen because it's exactly the same path that the UK went down with immigration, and it has turned the country. I don't even recognize parts of the country anymore, just slums, essentially. Slums, absolutely disgusting, horrible places, just unrecognizable to me. You know, London is a nice place, but nobody lives in London. Like, London's a ghost town after 6 o'clock because nobody can afford to live there. Will Toronto be like that? No, because Toronto isn't a big financial hub like London or New York. A lot of people compare Toronto to London, New York, but Toronto is nothing like these cities. The economy is just finance in Canada. It's all based on the housing market. It's not a great economy, as we saw what happened in 2020. So, interesting. Lynn, Happy New Year to you. Greetings from Victoria. Yeah. I just went over BC. It's kind of crazy. BOC is going to raise rates, I bet you $1. They could. I mean, they've got room to do it because they're not above the Fed's interest rate. I've been saying all this year that I reckon they have 25, 50 basis points if they need it. But I don't think they'll raise in 2024. Well, actually, I wouldn't say that because that depends on inflation. Like if the data inflation starts changing and it starts exploding again. But I just don't see how that would happen because demand is just falling because the economy is tanking. That's the thing. They're not able to get inflation down. Well, they are able to get inflation down, but what they don't tell you is they have to crush the economy in order to get it down. That's the only way. It's what Volcker did in the 70s. But nobody talks about that, so it's kind of funny. Do you think governments have colluded together to bring down the economies in each country? And if so, why? Well, there's definitely a globalist movement, with the World Economic Forum, the connection. I mean, you just cannot ignore what's going on. Take, for example, what's happening in the United States with the southern border. You've got what's happening in Europe with the migration crisis, particular places like Italy, Malta, tons and tons of refugees, migrants going there. And then you've got things happening in Canada as well, similar sort of paths. What you are seeing, though, which is kind of good, and it started in unusual places. I was listening to a video about Costa Rica actually the other day, and Costa Rica has elected another guy who's kind of a little bit like Javier Milei in Argentina. And he's like an ex-economist. And it's interesting that these type of people, now they're calling them far right, but you have to remember most of the media sits on the left. So everything is far right to them. But really, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, Costa Rica has been having problems with crime, and I'm not surprised because people poured into there and it's a massive bubble. I mean, I went to Ulvitas, which is in the south of Costa Rica. It's a place that people don't generally go, and we went there from Panama. You wouldn't believe the cost of real estate, what people have done there. They've pushed it to a house, like a 3-bedroom, 2,000 square foot house will cost you 550, 650,000 US dollars. And basically what happened in 2020 was the banks in Costa Rica started lending to foreigners. And a lot of foreigners have took advantage of that. They've leveraged up to buy Airbnbs and other things. That will not end well. It won't end well. I mean, you'll probably never see prices from 2019, but it's not going to end well when banks start doing that. It's not a thing of stability because they're not going to chase after somebody in a different country. But yeah, in answer to your question, I do definitely think there's a case that, all these governments are colluding together to with an agenda, essentially. So it's kind of crazy. But also got this nice sunset view. All right. Alessandro, nice to see you here. Lynn, what are your thoughts on buying physical silver as an investment? I have a lot of physical silver and a lot of physical gold vaulted, but I don't see it as an investment. I see it like insurance. So basically, as your net worth goes up or goes down, if it goes down, unfortunately, you buy and sell to have 10, 20% of your liquid money, so your savings or whatever your portfolio size is, like your liquid net worth. So whatever money you have accessible, essentially, and you use that. And 10, 20% of that value, because essentially the government, if they print or, they do something, then what's going to happen? Obviously, the value of those savings are going to go down. They're going to drop substantially. Now, if you've got money in equities, things like that, obviously there's a sort of correlation to inflation. I say sort of, there's like a rough correlation to inflation, so you don't need to factor that in. But all like your savings, I just see gold as insurance. Now, I don't really see silver as insurance. It's much more speculative. It doesn't behave the same as gold either. It's not so much of a safe haven asset. It's an industrial metal. Do I think the value of silver is going to go up over time? Yeah, I do. But it's just not the same. I think a lot of people lump silver and gold together, and silver's like the cheaper gold, if you will. But I don't agree with that. I think gold is kind of its separate thing. And again, like I don't class Bitcoin under that umbrella either. I don't think it's digital gold. I mean, it trades mostly in correlation with the NASDAQ. So it just trades like a risk asset. Anyway, Happy New Year's to you too, Alessandro. Great to have you here. I was 17 in the 70s, 17. Yeah, what a time that was with inflation towards the end of that, and then interest rates going over 20%. I mean, imagine if we had interest rates over 20% right now. Do you think the government will prohibit gold and silver for personal possessions? No, because I think with the central bank digital currency, they don't need to do that, because if you have to redeem that, you're going to have to redeem it into the central bank digital currency ecosystem, because any transaction that happens is going to be within that ecosystem, unless, of course, it's cash or crypto actually becomes a case. It's not as volatile, and then I could possibly see a use case for crypto. But like I said, because it just trades with risk assets and it's extremely volatile, I don't really see it as like a good way to get outside the banking system, at least right now. So yeah, but it's interesting. I don't think they would do that. And there would be massive uproar as well. And you have to think the way the government sort of works these days is it tries to do stuff like, it's like the bank bailouts, right? I don't think they will directly bail out the banks. I think it's more likely that they'll do stimulus, like whatever targeted stimulus it's going to be. So if there's a mortgage problem, it will be mortgage relief stimulus. I mean, the government's already pumping money in via the CMB program they announced in August, September time, or October, whenever they announced that. I mean, they were meant to be scrapping that CMB program, and now they've started buying mortgages out off the banks. So that is kind of a bailout, and I've actually got a video coming on that soon. So, but yeah, I don't think they'll do that. There's always backward ways that they can track the purchases and everything like that. And obviously, if you're buying it, you're going to have to buy it through your bank, and it's going to be through the central bank digital currency. It's going to be visible on their ledger anyway, so that they know that what you own and how you transact. And this is why it's so bad, because obviously it gives them too much control, and they're going to say, oh, it's the central bank, so it's separate to us. Yeah, we know how separate it really is. I mean, just look at what happened in 2020. I mean, a great example of that is Trump. Trump was on Twitter saying you need to drop rates, like to the Fed, like publicly. Everybody could see it. You don't think Justin Trudeau was on the phone to the Bank of Canada saying the same thing at that time? Obviously, of course. They wanted to spend. 17% interest rates, we're going to be back to the 70s. You know what? Interest rates at 5% right now, with the amount of leverage that we have in the system, is like having rates at 20%. Like, that's the level of pain. So if you had them at 17%, man, I mean, there's no way that it would be able to withstand that. Anybody would be able to withstand that without them printing money and issuing stimulus, which could happen. They could jack up rates and then start issuing stimulus and printing money. I mean, I think at some stage we're going to see I mean, think about it. If they have an economic crisis, they may not drop rates, but they may start printing money. I mean, who says that they have to drop rates? They could just start printing money as well. I mean, one kind of offsets the other, but yeah, it's interesting anyway. Speaking of Alberta, how is oil prices going to affect the economy? Well, it's a good thing that you mentioned oil, because, you know, I was chatting with my girlfriend the other day, and I was saying, like, man, you know, the gas prices being this low right now. I mean, they're not that low, but being this low, considering everything that's going on, all the price pressures on prices of oil going up, and you've got gas prices at this level, shows how bad the economy is. So obviously, US will head into a recession. I think the economy in the US is stronger than Canada structurally right now. I mean, you only have to look at the data to see that. And I think that when the US enters recession, that's going to affect Alberta specifically. And Alberta will be specifically bad, because it always is bad. And the oil economy in Alberta, I mean, I know people who work in that industry, and that industry, there's been no boom. There's been no boom. I mean, I've read some comments from people who say there's been a boom, but I know a lot of people working in this industry, and there's been no boom, and they've actually been laying people off. I mean, we've covered those stories on this channel. A lot of the people now are contractors as well. So it's even worse. They're not even employed. So when work dries up, they just say, hey, don't come in today. They don't even have to pay them severance. So, I mean, and these guys get paid a lot of money, by the way. They are the ones that are out there buying all the toys. They get paid serious money, but obviously when work stops, they have all these massive expenses and they can't afford them all of a sudden. I mean, it's just kind of crazy, because I know a lot of people in that industry, like I said, and they seem to just repeat the same mistakes over and over again. But anyway, we won't get onto that, just in case they're watching this video. They'll probably hate me for that. Anyway, actually they wouldn't, but anyways. The year of housing fear. Yeah, I mean, you look at the cycle, at some point the fear capitulation is going to come, and it looks like it's going to happen in 2024, and you just wouldn't expect that in 2024, would you? Because you've got all this narrative about soft landing, everything's going to be okay. So yeah, kind of crazy. Are we going to see the legislative end of capital gains exemption on principal residence? I don't know. This is the winter of our discount. Do you think the BC? Yeah, I think, as I said earlier in this video, if you didn't hear, the Airbnb is really going to affect it, because that really sent rural BC specifically skyrocketing throughout the 2020 and 2021. It was a lot of people buying Airbnb and investment properties. Now, the funny thing is, I've been tracking a lot of these areas, and people were selling them prior to the legislation that came in BC. And then obviously that legislation's come in as well. So that limits what a person can do who's buying those properties in these areas where prices have doubled in some cases and the locals can't afford them. And there's just no market. I mean, because the market that was there was artificially created by Airbnb. So it was out-of-town investors, people from Calgary, people from Vancouver, who were buying those homes. And then obviously, if they can't put them on Airbnb, if there's no case for that, even if they can put them on Airbnb, the way Airbnb's going with all the legislation, even in Mexico, I mean, you wouldn't expect it, but even in Mexico, they're tightening up regulations. Everywhere it's happening. In Panama, they're tightening up regulations in certain provinces as well. So it's happening everywhere, because it's pushed up rental prices and home prices, and people are pissed and they don't like it. And, you know, Airbnb is a shitty company, in my opinion. I just think that when you look at Airbnb, how it's run, how little due diligence they actually do on these hosts, like it is a joke. It's scary. I mean, you would probably expect that when you book an Airbnb, like the host has been vetted, but you know, you're hearing all about these cameras, different things, people being robbed, all kinds of different stories from Airbnbs. And it puts you off staying in them. And hotels, what they did throughout 2020 and 2021 was they all renovated, because essentially the stock market was on fire. It was free money galore. So they all had cash and they poured it into renovating the places. So now a lot of the hotels are like suites. They're fairly priced. You know, they even have like a mini grocery store downstairs in the lobby. If you have a problem, you just go to the reception. You know, it's just a way better situation. So I think Airbnb is really going to struggle, especially as consumers become more price sensitive, and they just already can't compete with these hotels. So yeah, I think the fundamental value of BC, the housing market, has dropped, especially in these rural places. So I just don't see how prices would rise there when the locals can't afford it. I just don't see a way where prices could rise there when locals are priced out, Who's going to buy that as an investment property? All they can do is a long-term rental, and then you're renting to locals who can only afford so much. So it makes no sense, and that's why they're all selling right now. That is why you go to these places where Airbnb was a big thing, like Oliver, Azoyu, Summerland, all these different places, and there's a lot for sale. I mean, there's houses for sale in different parts of Summerland that, I mean, I was looking in 2021, and they were going for double. So they've gone down 50%. And over that period of time, we've seen our purchasing power decline by probably at least 25%. So think about the real decline. Just think about the real decline. That is imaginable. So people say, oh, we're never going to have home prices decline by more than 50%. They already have in certain areas. You've just got to look. I mean, it has happened because people were paying way over what it was worth in 2021. They were going 100, 200,000 over asking, and it was just complete mania, as I've said many times. Just kind of crazy. Sorry, I got off on a little bit of a tangent on that one. Stocks, bonds, fiat are not money. They are IUs of variable value. Yeah, I agree with you. That is well, stocks aren't, but bonds, fiat currency, yeah, they are. Stocks, I mean, they're just ownership in the company. That's the way I think of it. Hi, I said hi on Instagram and you didn't reply to me. Well, I reply to everyone, so I'm probably going to have my inbox full after this live stream, but I'll check again unless you did like really recently. I don't check it all the time. I'm not on social media all the time because it's just, it can be consuming. Huge layoffs have started. Yeah, we saw that this year, and I mean, it just makes no sense, the immigration, right? That's what I've been thinking about that a lot this holiday season, like the immigration that Canada is doing. And considering all these people can't get jobs, even if they can get jobs, they're taking them off Canadians and they're just keeping wages low. I just think that, yeah, it's so bad. And I would have thought that they would have stopped it or at least put a pause on it, but man, this government is just beyond stupid. Beyond stupid. Philip says Luke has no idea what he's talking about. BOC will raise rates. Well, I guess we'll see. Nobody knows exactly. Hope housing starts to decline, orders collapse, profit collapse, employment collapses. Yeah, and you've got to think about how many jobs rely on construction and that sector, and starts are already in free fall. So it's just not a good sign considering how much employment we've actually seen growing in that sector throughout this year. And I know a lot of people would think, well, Luke, we need all these houses to be built, but really you've just got to look where the demand is coming from. And from what I hear from different people who work in home construction, things are pretty slow right now, even in Calgary. I know a guy, I speak to him on a regular basis, who works at a big development up in Airdrie, and he says that things are not moving quickly at all. And of course, as well, you've got to think that it's pretty deceptive when it comes to new builds because, for example, the guy was saying in Airdrie that they've built a lot of these homes and they're not sold, but they've only got 2 listed on the MLS. They've got the 2 different types of floor plan. And then they've got all these, 20, 30, 40, 50 homes that they've built, and they're not on the MLS. So they're not even included in the inventory statistics. So it can be kind of misleading in that way. So, any data on which jobs are going to be surviving during the recession? The same ones that always probably survive during a recession. I mean, to be honest, I think that this time, though, blue-collar jobs are going to be a lot safer than they were before, and that's just because there's such a lack of skills. Like, if you're a mechanic or you're just doing anything hands-on, then you're going to be much safer than like your white-collar jobs. I think it's really going to be a massive white-collar recession. I mean, there will be jobs that are lost in engineering, manufacturing, oil and gas, all those different things, but I just don't think it's going to be hit the same way because there are labor shortages there. And they're just struggling, right? They're struggling to keep hold of people because those people are in demand right now, not just in Canada, but in the United States. They can go to the United States, earn a lot more money, and buy a house for a lot less money, better weather, everything like that. More of a constitutionally sound country than Canada. That's all I'll say on that. At least people want to protect the Constitution. I mean, I know there's a lot of us that want to protect the Constitution here in Canada and protect the Charter of Freedoms and Rights. But the thing is, Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But the thing is, obviously, it's just crazy that it's a minority. I mean, I just don't get it. You would think that it would be everybody that would want to do that, but it just seems like a minority, and it seems in certain pockets as well. Like, obviously, there's a lot of people that want that in Alberta, that want to protect the Constitution, protect the Charter, but in other places out east, they're not so bothered. And yeah, it's just kind of crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. Canada should be like USSR. No one can own more than one house. What, that was a thing in the USSR? I mean, I'm not even sure if that's a I don't think it's a good way to go down authoritarian routes like that, even though we're on one anyway. We've got an authoritarian government right now. This government wasn't democratically elected, minority government. A lot of people as well, they don't know that. To a lot of people outside of Canada, they think that we all voted to get Trudeau in, but we didn't. Like, Trudeau got a minority government, and he's literally just collaborating with either the NDP or the Quebecois, who just essentially want to screw over Canada because they're the separatists. So they'll do whatever pisses off Canadians the most, which, is pretty much everything Trudeau does. And obviously Trudeau is from Quebec as well. You have to remember that as well. But it's just kind of crazy to me because he wasn't democratically elected. Minority government shouldn't be allowed. It should have to go to another election if it happens that way. You should keep having to have elections. And I think the amount that they're allowed to spend on their campaign should be way, way lower to give other parties that are smaller a better chance, because you have a two-party system, a three-party system if you include the NDP. You've got the NDP, the Conservatives, and the Liberals, and there ain't going to be much change with any of them. I mean, you're changing the mouthpiece, but is what's going to happen behind the scenes? Is the power structure behind the scenes going to change? No, you're just changing the face. You're changing the facade. That's all these parties are. They're just a facade. I mean, look at how they're funded. Look who's funding them. So, yeah, kind of crazy. Anyway, I've kind of gone off on one. And talking about the USSR, I was thinking about that the other day as well, because I was thinking, Canada in many ways is very similar to the USSR in terms of how the standard of living is collapsing, because in the USSR, it was lack of incentives that obviously caused corruption to become rife, productivity tanked because of the lack of incentives, and then the whole thing just imploded on itself. But if you think about it, for different and similar reasons, depending on what you're talking about, we see the same exact thing happening in Canada. I don't even know if it's at a slower pace. I really have to look at it, but it's a piece of history that I've become quite interested in because of this. You can see the parallels in productivity, lack of incentives, corruption, all these different things. Because if there is lack of incentives, people are more able to be like it's easier to corrupt people because obviously they're more desperate to get that money. I mean, think about how easy it would be to bribe someone now compared to 5 years ago. Obviously, it's going to be much easier. And what has caused that? So it's interesting anyway. Oh man, that's what I love about these things. We just go on mad tangents, but it's funny that guy mentioned USSR, and I was thinking about that the other day. Oh, this is a good question. You have said that simply building more housing would not be a solution to the housing crisis because a lot of buying is due to speculation. How would an increase in supply not reduce prices, though? Well, so in the environment we're in right now, it would, obviously. But if we were in the environment of 2021, would it? No. I mean, you had a massive amount of inventory in Calgary that was built up throughout like the recessions and everything like that. And the Calgary housing market was pretty weak. But it took probably about 18 months for speculation to gobble all that up, essentially. And now you've got prices that are rising and local people can't afford it. And most of that is due to out-of-province speculators, because I know people in that industry and they say that it baffles them, especially condos. You know, specifically condos, 90% of the people who are buying are from Ontario. That is just insane. That is just absolutely insane. So there's still a crazy amount of speculation, and you crunch the numbers on a condo and try and cash flow it, and it makes no sense. And if you had the money cash, why aren't you putting it in a treasury or a bond? It's much safer. You don't have to worry about tenants and all that crap. So the people who are doing it are pretty brain dead, we have to say. But again, in a mania, I just think it's a lot of people from Ontario who look at Calgary and probably think this is the next Toronto. It's undervalued because the prices are less. It's an interesting thing to go down. But yeah, it's not gonna last long term because you've priced out local people once again. We had exactly the same thing happen in all these markets in BC and rural Ontario as well. So getting back to your question there, there's a problem with speculation. I think the reason why that's happened is because you've got a problem with mortgage lending in Canada, in the fact that the government and us, the taxpayer, subsidize it. And the problem is that not enough people are aware of that. And I'll ask you, I've got a video that's coming on this, and I really hope it goes viral and people share it, and I don't think it will because, you know, it's a boring topic. People don't want to listen to it. But at the end of the day, I think it's so important because when people understand that the government is the one that has pushed this bubble the most in the forms of the CMHC, CMB program, and also the fact that private mortgage insurance is allowed, it just creates huge moral hazard. And that moral hazard builds up, right? It builds up in the system because the longer you go without a crisis, as dumb as it sounds, more and more people begin to believe that that won't happen. Just think about Canada. Just think about Canada for that example, because we've seen exactly that here. I mean, if you'd gone 2-3 years ago and said to people housing prices are going to be coming down like 20-30% in a few years, they would have said, yeah, right, what have you been smoking, you know? But that's actually happened. We've had home prices that went down more than 20% nationally, and they did that within a 12-month period. So that was a rapid decline. And you figure that between 2006 and 2008 in the US, in the early stage of the financial crisis and the deflation of that bubble, how much did prices go down? They went down around 13%. So we did nearly double that, and we did it in half the speed. We did it in about 6 months. Well, actually, just a quarter of the speed. We did it in about 6 months. And you would expect that with the size of this bubble. So, you know, it really depends on the circumstances, because obviously the speculation that we've seen throughout the past couple of years, I mean, the statistics are out there. Like places around Ontario, all these towns surrounding Toronto, in the Greater Toronto area, a lot of the people there, 90% during 2021 were investors. So obviously, I think the way you get investors out of the market is by making the banking system lend on a more fair system. Right now, the system is stacked in the favor of those who own. Those who own are allowed to leverage and leverage and leverage. And I don't think that system is right, because the only reason they're allowed to do that is because of the taxpayer backup. And and the only reason the taxpayer backup is there is because not a lot of people are educated enough to realize what's really going on in the housing market. And it does piss me off. It lights me up, because I think, well, you know, it annoys me because I see people like Pierre who are extremely good at, what could I say? Whipping up the public. He's very good at that. He's a populist. And but what he spews is a very similar solution to what Trudeau is currently doing right now. Pierre would do a better job of it. Getting rid of the red tape is going to help build a lot more homes. And I don't disagree with that policy. I don't disagree with getting all the red tape and regulations out of the way. I think that's a good policy. But he doesn't even talk about demand. He doesn't even talk about that component. So that should worry a lot of people, because, and this is why I've told people not to get carried away with different politicians, because you're setting yourself up for disappointment. I'm sorry to say. Pierre is a very similar, he's different because he's new age, but he reminds me of like David Cameron and the Conservatives in the UK. And they did exactly what Pierre is promising, and they did a good job of it. They built more homes. I saw this happen in my own country. It's still going on today. They're building everywhere. It's absolutely insane. But they got a lot of the red tape out of the way. They got all the NIMBYs out of the way. All those people who were saying, no, you can't build there, you can't build on that empty farmer's field. They got them all out of the way. They made and targeted all the different municipalities, towns, communities that they had to build so many homes. Similar sort of program to what Trudeau is doing, and they also got rid of a lot of the regulation and red tape. Did housing prices go down in the UK? I mean, did that happen? No, it didn't happen. They stagnated for a while, but they were already stagnant before that happened. So, you know, that didn't happen. If investors are able to make money, then they'll try and do it. The problem is, in Canada, they're not even making money. Well, I suppose they assume that they're going to make money in terms of the appreciation. But we've got to the real dangerous part of the bubble now, where it's all speculation. There's no investors left. They're all speculators. They brand themselves as investors. But if you're coming to Calgary buying a condo, it's cash flow negative, and you're thinking that the price is going to go up, you're speculating on the future price growth. You're a speculator. You're not an investor. In fact, you're losing money. So it's ridiculous. And considering the risk and the fact that there is far better investments that pay a pretty much guaranteed rate, it makes absolutely no sense. But probably a lot of people, again, lack of education on those sort of things like government bonds and different things like that. I mean, that's why I tried to do a video on it on this channel, because barely anybody explains how it works, how you purchase them. It's not a complicated thing. It really isn't. So can another 10 million Indian immigrants keep the housing bubble inflated? It's funny because a few of my friends who are from India, they say that actually sentiment has kind of shifted over the past couple of months, and that now, because people are starting to realize from India who come here that it's not all cracked up like they thought it was going to be, it's not as great as what they thought it was going to be, they're staying there. And the thing is, a lot of people have got to realize the type of quality of the people you're getting, because India is a country on the way up. India is a country where the standard of living is actually increasing. It's a developing country. It's growing. Big economy, big population. So there's ways you can make lots of money in India. There is a lot of people making loads of money in India. You can start businesses in India. So it makes more sense to do it there because there's a way lower cost for your cost of living and things like that. So a lot of people are figuring that out now, and they're saying, well, makes no sense coming to Canada. Canada is on a place that's going down. India is on a place that's going up. Standard of living is lower, don't get me wrong, but at some point, I don't know when, 10, 20 years, they could cross each other. They honestly could. Everything is cycles. Countries go down, countries come up. It's all in cycles. I mean, look at Argentina. That's a big example. That's a country done horrifically bad, but look at Argentina, 30, 40, 50 years ago. It was booming. And Brazil. Mexico backdrop. Thanks, Vic. Merry Christmas to you and Happy New Year to you too. If you had to invest in one thing for 2024, it would be what I'm invested in right now, and that's bonds. That's bonds. So, yeah, I wouldn't put it in stocks. I mean, why? There's just, I think the risk far outweighs the reward right now. You can get such a decent yield. I mean, I locked in 5.2% on the 20-year. I wish I bought way more than 10%, that's for sure. But I think bonds are the best place, and they are hated. Nobody wants bonds right now. I saw a poll on Bloomberg, and I posted it on my Instagram. And bonds was it was like, do you want to invest? I can't remember. It was like equities, bonds. I can't remember what else was there. It might have been crypto, gold, or something like that. But anyway, bonds was the last thing that people wanted to invest in, and that makes me happy and want to invest in bonds even more. Now, not corporate bonds. I believe that that's very risky, considering that a lot of these corporations are essentially bankrupt anyway. But I mean, again, you can look at companies that have tons and tons of cash, and their bonds are probably pretty safe. Companies that everybody loves, like Apple, but are they paying enough of a premium that it's worth buying one of their bonds versus a government bond? I don't know. But yeah, I am invested in bonds, and that's the only thing I'd invest in at 2024 at this time. I was born in northern Alberta. I hate snow. Well, this year been the warmest winter in 140 years, I think. But not a lot of snow on the ground, which is good. Yeah, BC does have harsh mandates and a backwards province. Corrupted province. It's just a corrupt province. That's really what it comes down to. Nice from Cyprus. Happy New Year to you too. I don't know who that is, Vic, but I will do. Just going down. Try and get to some of these more recent ones. Thank you all for joining and coming on. We got 370 people. That is crazy. Okay. Dollar milkshake theory. Yes. If you have not seen that, watch it, believe it, because as much as everybody says the dollar's going to collapse, it is the best fiat currency, the best of a bunch of terrible currencies, essentially. Thank you, Sneaky Pete. Happy New Year to you. Very, very kind. Happy New Year, Brad. Santa. Oh, Satan Claus. Oh, that's a funny one. You got that one, that account specifically for Christmas time. Yeah, yeah, that is very true. And I think that saying about, the recession becomes a depression when you lose your job really kind of hits it home because, yeah, people are like, oh, yeah, recession, recession, but not me. It's not going to happen to me. It could happen to any of us. That's why you have to have a plan. A plan is completely free. There's just no excuse for not having a plan for if you lose your job. What do you have to do? What are you going to do? You just got to have a plan. I mean, there's always something. There's always a way to make money. Most people generally don't want to get their hands dirty, don't want to do it. Maybe it's hard manual labor, but there's always a way. There's always a way for people who work hard. I mean, I know that firsthand because I managed to keep working after the global financial crisis. I went out of college. I got laid off that job, and basically I had another job lined up within 2-3 months. And the thing is, obviously, when all that was happening, I didn't even know or realize. Like I didn't know anything about economics back then, and I wasn't thinking, oh, it's the global financial crisis. I was just thinking, like most people will when the recession hits here, I was just thinking, this is terrible. Man, there's like 50 applications for every single job. But I just got past that. I realized I'm going to get rejected for 90% of them. And I realized the best thing to do is just make yourself efficient in applying for jobs and just make yourself stand out, essentially, if you can. Applying for jobs online, it's really hard to do that. I mean, I can remember I had help off my dad because he's worked in creative design his whole life, and he helped me design this resume that was like a menu. So basically, because back then I actually went out to places and dropped in my resume. And the thing is, the resume, it was such a bizarre size that people opened it and people were kind of interested in it. And I did actually get people call me back, surprisingly. But you know what? I bet even now, if you put a resume into different places locally, because nobody probably does that anymore, it might be worth doing because you do set yourself apart from the crowd. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. Slosher, super chat, thank you so much. I heard you quote stats on how much immigrants make after being here 5 years. Where do you get your numbers from, income and unemployment? It's all Statistics Canada. It's all there. So you can get all the numbers on that from Statistics Canada. They do different surveys, or you can even Google it. And most of these things come right up and send you to the right place. So what else we got here? No politician. Yeah, exactly, Lynn. That's the attitude that people need to have. No politician is going to save us. We have to save ourselves. It's up to us to save ourselves. I've been thinking. I don't even think it will happen, but I've been debating asking Pierre whether he would actually do an interview with me. I think there's like a 1% chance of that happening anyway. And I was thinking, is it even going to be worth me doing that? Because, like, even if he said yes, because I was thinking it's going to be a heck of a lot of work for me. And also, I don't even think he's going to answer my questions. And I think that will piss me off. It'll probably be a viral video if he did come on an interview, because I'd be like, as soon as he started meandering off political speak, which all these politicians do, I'd just go, can you just answer my question? Can you just answer my original question? Because all the interviews I've seen of him, people are just kind of pandering to where he wants the conversation to go. And I don't like that. Like, you have a specific question, answer it. Don't just give us political speak on everything. But yeah, I doubt he would even come on an interview. But I've thought about it. I've thought about asking. And I may ask. I probably will ask now. I've said it on here. It feels more it feels more of a commitment that I have to ask. So I will ask. See what happens. I mean, I haven't got any sort of facility where I could host him or anything, so I don't even know how to conduct it. I haven't got a team or anything like that. I mean, my setup is not that mobile or sophisticated, so yeah, anyways. But nobody decent, in my opinion, that I've seen has interviewed him. And if you have seen somebody decent interview him, let me know, because it's the same with all of them. I watched the True North one the other day, and I just thought that was just not good. And I think it's because a lot of them are just, they kind of go with the views that they like, so they don't sort of press him that way because... And I think a lot of it is because Trudeau, and everyone's just so sick of Trudeau as well. It makes anybody look good. I mean, you could put a matchstick up for election and it will do a better job than Trudeau. So, yeah. I don't get that. Maybe I'm reading that wrong. Maybe that's a conversation. If someone could totally liquidate and build again, do you think the materials will stay propped up next year? Oh, the prices maybe you're talking about? No, because building is going down. Building's going down in the United States and Canada, so... You don't have to send 5 cents, Philip. Your comments on the screen right now. Cowson, buddy, you are a legend, man. Thank you so much, and Happy New Year to you. I hope you had a great holiday season. I nearly said Merry Christmas. But yeah, thank you so much for supporting the channel, my friend. You are a legend. Toronto had 231 cranes for multiple dwelling unit construction. There were only 498 cranes doing the same building in all North America. Toronto had half of all the construction cranes. I remember hearing about that. It was like that. It's been like that since I got here in 2016. It's absolutely nuts. They don't have to remember the 1980s. They just have to remember 2014, 2015. I mean, how many times do we have to have the Alberta move into Alberta cycle happen? I mean, I went through those stats. I was even chatting to a buddy of mine. He knows I have the channel, but I sent him one of my videos from the past. I hate sending people I know videos, but I was just like, dude, I go through the articles from 2014 and 2015, and you just tell me how those line up and sound like what's happening right now and what could happen in the future. Because in the articles where people are leaving, they don't say they're leaving out of choice. They say they're leaving because they lost their job. And, I've seen both cycles. Most people, well, a lot of people who've come here have only seen when things are good, but I've seen when things are bad. And that's when people are all moving away. It's like a boom bust cycle. And we'll keep having these boom bust cycles here because people, I mean, this is one of the largest ones. So who knows how this is going to play out? Maybe, no, it's just, there's no way. I keep thinking like, maybe there's some way that they can sustain the economy here, but no, you got a load of weak tech companies. The weakest ones seem to come here. That's not even a big part of the economy either, even though that's what's in the mainstream media most of the time. For Calgary specifically, construction jobs, energy industry, and the energy industry has been shrinking this whole time anyway. So, yeah, anyway. It's New Vancouver. Yeah, maybe. God, I mean, there's more and more homeless people, more and more drug addicts everywhere, unfortunately. Satan claus. Yeah, you know what? I just cannot stand the winters, even though this winter's been pretty mild. Well, it's been very mild compared to the mildest winter I've ever seen in Alberta, but unless you can get away, unless you can afford to get away, those that can afford to get away do go. But yeah, it's just kind of crazy. Like Calgary does have long, long winters. I mean, snow, I've seen it snowing in May. You know, it's easy. The temperatures at nighttime are in the negatives all the way until pretty much April, May time. Well, usually May even. I've even seen a frost in August because I get up extremely early, go for a walk, and I saw a frost in August, and I was just like, Jesus, man, you're being reminded that winter is coming in August. And then I think that year it did snow in September. Just I can't deal with that long term. I mean, I do think though Satan Claus is right. A lot of people just move here purely out of the housing desperation type mentality. And I think that's just a bad way to move to a place because you're immediately going to resent that place in the future because you're not moving to it because you fell in love with that place, because you spent a lot of time in that place and you know it's a place you want to live. You're just moving there because it's the only place you can afford and you want to buy a house. Not going to end well, in my opinion, but that's what a lot of people have decided to do. But we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll be wrong. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. Yeah, taxes. God, that's coming up as well. Flipping taxes next year. Pay more and more money to that stupid government. It'd be different if you actually got something. When you add up the amount of money that you spend in taxes and what you actually get back from the system, it's disgusting. That's the disgusting thing. It's not like you're getting good healthcare and different things like that. It would be a different story if you were actually getting half decent services, but you're just not. And that's the problem. That it's value for money, like everything. If people, there are Scandinavian countries where taxes are way higher than Canada. And people are a lot happier there because the services, the public services they have are very, very good. Now, even over the past 5 years in those countries, they've had significant issues and people are pissed because, again, what Europe's done with migration, and it goes back to this globalist thing. I don't know what's going on, but it seems like maybe they're doing this to destabilize these countries. I mean, it's happening all over Western countries that migration is just absolutely going crazy. Unskilled migration is just going crazy. I mean, you think it's bad in Canada. I mean, UK is a smaller country and the net migration was something like 900,000 people. You got to remember, the UK is a small country and it's got like a population that's 68 million, something like that, in a place that's smaller than Southern Ontario. Well, probably about the same size as Southern Ontario. So it's got a population density of similar level to India, actually. So anyways, getting off on a tangent, but yeah, Lynn, you're 100% right. I love that you said that. I don't know if you knew that already or you got that from previous videos, but as you know, I've said that so many times. I've brought up the NBER article. You know, The Big Short makes it out that it's all the subprime that was the reason the housing market blew up, and it was actually all the prime borrowers. The subprime started first, but think about that, guys. That is only logical, because the weaker hands, they're going to stop paying first. And we're seeing that happen right now. Private mortgages. In fact, I'm going to probably be covering a story this week about it. Private mortgage defaults are rising. Those are for more riskier people, more riskier borrowers. So those are your subprime. And the default rates are skyrocketing there. And then eventually the prime borrowers. The prime borrowers are better credit. They're in a better situation. But they're the biggest group. The subprime group might represent 10, 20, probably 20% in Canada, because Canada does have a massive subprime component, bigger than the US, due to the immigration and everything like that, and the woke nonsense that I think that people won't call out. A lot of these people just doing crazy things in these immigrant communities, taking advantage of immigrants who don't know the system, basically. And yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah, probably. That makes them. Wow, look at it right now. I mean, look at it right now. Look at what happened in 2020, and you would be exactly right. So, yeah, big cities will be the first place where civil unrest unfolds. Yeah, PPC is better than the Conservatives, but yeah, exactly. They'll never. It's kind of like a wasted vote, even, because you have to tactically vote to get Trudeau out. And yeah, it feels like a waste of a vote because they won't even get anywhere. Oh, there you go. So it was 600. I stand corrected. It was 672,000 in 2023. And the UK has a population, like I said, over 68 million on a I got somebody must know that, but I think the UK has got to be smaller than Southern Ontario. And England itself is absolutely tiny. I mean, it's probably, yeah, I'm looking right now. So it's similar size to Maryland, West Virginia, South Carolina, and Massachusetts. The size of England. That's just the size of England. That's not the size of the UK. But most of the people go to England. Yeah, exactly. I don't think he is. China, China, that's a mouthful. El Nino, yeah. Yeah, that is right. El Nino. It's affecting the weather everywhere, actually, because even in Cabo, it was just insanely humid, which is unusual for the time of year. And it was so green as well. So green because they actually had rain this year. So, oh. Oh, flip up, man. You're just killing me with your comments. So funny. Yeah, any second citizenship gives you options, exactly. Lady Luck says Canada, she's dirty, but she's home. Yeah, a lot of the Caribbean. Wow, yeah, I know Sheridan saying how long before mortgage debtors. Well, they're already doing that, going to Sugar Daddy Trudeau and asking for mortgage relief, and and Freeland's even said about it. So I hope it doesn't happen, but who knows? We could see it happen. It's kind of crazy. Change of scenery. Man, I tell you what, it's been a just so crazy trying to get this setup all done. And it's actually a mobile setup, believe it or not. That well, you can't see it, the green screen, but I'll take a look at that. The VPN link goes to the 404 page. It's weird. I went through the recession. Lady Luck says, I went through the recession as a recent grad in the early 90s. It was great. It was get a job, lost a job. I worked about 4 years between 1990 and 1997. It was really bad and I hustled. Yeah. Sounds like me when I got out of college and yeah, there was no jobs. I was trying to find a part-time job. The only place that was always hiring was McDonald's. McDonald's was always hiring, and that's because people were always leaving there because it was just, I think they've got it much better though now at McDonald's, because back then I even worked at McDonald's for a brief while because I couldn't find anything else. And when I was working at McDonald's, it was just a nightmare. Now they've got it kind of better, where I think the process has been just made a lot better, or it definitely looks like it has with the order process. Back then it was just everybody just would queue up at the tills and you would just be getting so backed up in the back. Yeah, AI, I don't know why now though, because AI has been around for a long time, but there's a real push for it now. Again, that's a bit of a weird thing. Thank you, AS. Happy New Year to you. Thank you very much. Alessandro, thanks so much for supporting the channel. Thank you for moderating the chat. We're going to be doing live streams. Oh, National Post did a great 1 hour interview. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. National Post did a great interview with Pierre, apparently. Cheers to a 2024 soft landing in the bag. Happy New Year's, Luke, and to everyone else. Glad to see the channel has come along as it has, and thank you for your continued hard work. Thank you, buddy, for supporting the channel. Thank you for being here, and thank you, everybody, for your support. Been listening to Clyde. Oh, man, why do they keep flashing all the comments? I want to know what your thoughts are on AI and the effect on the job market. Could we be heading for the perfect storm? Yeah, AI is going to have a massive impact on the job market. It's already happening. I saw last week that Google is another tech firm that's laying more workers off. It's those tech jobs that are most at risk for AI, and it's white-collar workers. So, yeah, during this recession, a lot of jobs probably aren't going to come back because of AI. There's been a lot of investment into AI for some reason over 2023. I don't know why in 2023, just another reason, I guess, to drive euphoria in the stock market. I'm not too sure, but you know, why not 2021? It was all about EVs in 2021. Does anybody remember that? EVs is long gone now, apart from, you know, Trudeau saying that by 2035, we're all going to be driving electric cars. And I'm going to show you, because I'm going back to England in April, and for some unknown reason, England, when I looked at rental cars, electric vehicles are way less money. And I thought, well, you know what? That's an opportunity to test it and see what it's really like in the real world. And I'll tell you the price of the vehicle that I'm going to be driving, and we'll do a walkthrough of it, and I'll tell you what it's been like. And I guarantee, because I've already, you know, been looking into different things and seeing if it's even possible, where can I charge this thing, all these different things. And it's going to be a nightmare, because England is a good use case for EVs, right? Because it's a small country. So you would think that if EVs were going to work, they would work in England. It's a complete nightmare, and the charging process is the worst thing, because you've got like 20, 30, 40 different charging providers. Each one, you need an account or a card, or you need their app. So, you know, it's just a total, you can't just go to these meters and just pay on your credit card and then get a charge. Oh no, you've got to have the app. You've got to have an access card. You can't even use it without an access card. It is just a total, it's going to be fun anyways to see what it will be like, but it will just show how completely ridiculous it is that they're talking about this in Canada now. Just never going to happen. Why aren't they talking about hydrogen? Hydrogen is the future, not EVs. EVs are like the freaking diesel. And what an amazing thing the diesel was, right? And that was just a total disaster when they realized that that wasn't so eco-friendly as everybody was claiming. It's the same with EVs and where they have to mine all these precious minerals and metals from, places in Bolivia. They're starving towns and cutting their water off to get them. They don't tell you that when you go and buy a Tesla. But yeah, just crazy, man. All these battery plants as well are just a joke, because it's all subsidized through the taxpayer, because nothing can get done in this country. Nobody wants to invest in this country unless they're getting a backhand from the government. It's just that those backhands now are visible in public. They say, hey, we've got this new Volkswagen deal. We're giving them all this money. We're getting nothing back for you. That is literally corruption happening right in front, and nobody does anything about it. It's just, it baffles me. It's like it's open air corruption for everybody to see. Just bribe companies to come to your country with taxpayer money that nobody asked to be spent on that. Please please remove that annoying beep from your videos. Okay. Well, it was just to differentiate the start, but I'll take your feedback on board. Maybe I'll look at doing that. I do listen to people's feedback. Thanks, Luke, for your rant and raves. Happy New Year to you. What are your thoughts on Europe and the UK? Is it better to be in South America and Asia? Well, if a war breaks out, I probably think it's better to be in South America, Central America, just as far away from Europe and the United States as possible. And South America pretty much fits that criteria. And there might be wars going on in Asia, so I don't particularly think that could be a great place to be. But, there's places everywhere. I've really been thinking about it, because I've been thinking, is Panama the right place to go? And I think temporarily for a while, Panama will be the place for us, because we can get to learning Spanish there, and then we can move on from Panama, maybe go to Chile or somewhere else. So we'll see. But I think you have to be flexible, because things are changing all the time. I mean, Panama hasn't been a stable place over the past year, that's for certain. And I don't predict with what's happening with the canal, it's going to be amazingly stable either. But in terms of Central America, for a starting place, I think it's a good place to go. I think there's Paraguay as well, which somebody who's watching this video is sat in Paraguay right now. There's Chile, you've got Costa Rica, but that's so overvalued. I'd avoid there. Mexico's okay. You don't obviously have the tax advantages. One place which we still may move to down the road is Montenegro in Europe. I mean, the cost of living has been driven up drastically there, because they've had a lot of people come from Russia and Ukraine who've gone to Montenegro. But Montenegro is good because it's one of the lowest tax places in Europe. You've got Malaysia. Malaysia is a really good place. Yeah, I'll have an exciting announcement about that later this year. But yeah, Malaysia, that looks like a good place to go. But yeah, EV is a scam. Yeah, it is. When you calculate, and the other thing I've been looking at as well, obviously it doesn't matter to me because I'm renting the car, but when you actually plug and charge it at one of these charge stations, it costs you a comparable amount to filling up with petrol in the UK, gasoline. So essentially, to fill up with gas, it's not costing you much more than the electric's costing you, but you just had to pay 30-40% more to have an EV because they're way more expensive than your natural gas. Natural gas, That I forgot what they call them. ICE vehicles. Internal combustion engine. Hydroelectric power under your house. If you guys haven't seen JCB, it's funny because my granddad, I love him. He's awake. He's probably the only guy in my family who is awake, and I love him so much for that. And he was saying to me, he was saying, Luke, you got to check out, I know you've been on about hydrogen for a long time. He was like, you got to check out JCB. JCB has come out with all these hydrogen things. You can see it on YouTube. And they're saying like EVs, like electric, because they do obviously things like CAT. They're doing like all this industrial equipment. So EVs for industrial equipment are just a complete waste of time. They're not powerful enough that you can do it. It doesn't make sense. So JCB, they've created hydrogen internal combustion engines. And I think that is the way to go. Completely clean. The hydrogen, it can be pressurized. It can be, I mean, the technology on hydrogen has moved on so much now that the cost to actually make hydrogen relatively low. So there's just no excuse. And there is hydrogen stations everywhere. And there is even hydrogen vehicles that you can buy, although limited, and there's nowhere to fill them up. But yeah, hydrogen, if you want to go green, hydrogen would be the way, not EVs. And that's what makes me think, what is behind the agenda of EVs? Is it just that these politicians are acting stupid, or is there another motive, like they can just turn it off? Nobody can fill up. We're on lockdown or whatever, and nobody can fill up anymore. I shouldn't have said that word. The whole stream now will be compromised. That word is not a word that you can say on YouTube without something happening. Every time I've said that, something happens on YouTube anyway. But anyway, I got to the end of the list. Thank you so much for watching the channel. Thank you so much for watching the videos. I appreciate you spending this time with me on December 30th here. Thank you so much, and have a happy new year. Enjoy New Year's Eve tomorrow, and I wish you all the best in 2024. Have a plan for 2024. Things are going to get gnarly, but if you have that plan, it's free to have it, and at least you know you've got your house in order. Thank you so much. I appreciate all your support. Thank you for the super chats. Thanks for the hate. Thanks for all the people that send the support. Gratitude. I love all of you. Thank you, and I will see you in the next.